So we left off on this wing. I was just about to do hue saturation on it under image adjustments. And remember, it's going to remember the last thing you did, so I'm going to change it from red to master. And I'm going to shift it a little bit towards the reds, and then I'm going to take its saturation down a little bit. And that's it. Next, I have this portion here. And it's the arm and the chest. So I'm going to go to levels. Remember, I'm just going from the front to the back. And I can decide if they need to go darker or lighter. I think it needs to go a little bit darker. If I want to goose the shadows a little bit, I can. And I'll limit the highlights a little bit. There we go. Okay, next, color balance. And I need to add some warmth to this. And it's there, I just need to bring it out. There we go. First with the, well, I should have done the midtones first. I did the shadows first. But I can balance everything on that. Actually, I'm going to reset it. So I'm going to start with the midtones. And bring out the warmth there first. Because the problem is I warmed up the shadows and I couldn't really see anything else after I did that. All right, so now I can go to the highlights, warm those up. There we go. And now I can go to the shadows. That's usually the order I get the best results, doing color balancing. Okay, so you can see that difference. Levels first, then color balance. Bring that warmth into it. Now, hue saturation. Which way do I want to shift it? How saturated? I might actually increase the saturation a little bit for this. They look a little bit more like eagle's feathers then. And now we get to the feet. But I don't really need the feet right now. So I'm going to leave that layer. And I want to find that back wing. Well, I'll do the tail. Let's make the tail to match. All right. So image, adjustments, levels. I want to darken it a little bit. Goose the shadows just a tiny bit. Do I want to goose the highlights? Yeah, tiny bit. Okay. Now, color balance. I actually don't mind that it fades to something quite a bit darker. But if I wanted it to match with the warmth, this would be the way I could do it. Or I could even push it a little bit more in the opposite direction. I'm just going to give it a little bit of that red, but I like how it gets to be darker and bluer. Yeah, I think that's about it. Okay. Now this wing, which is the furthest back from the viewer. And notice these are all starting to kind of work together in color, even though the edges are all messy. But this just does not fit. Like this and the neon green just do not fit. So image adjustment, levels, let's make that, take care of that. Do we want to go brighter with it? Do we want to go darker? I think just a little bit darker. I want to actually limit the shadows a little bit. And limit the highlights. Narrow its range. Okay, now image, adjustment, color balance. Midtones, a little bit more towards magenta, less towards green. That really helps. A little bit more towards the red. A bit more towards the blues. Okay. Then highlights. They're pretty much where they need to be. And then shadows. Bring a little bit of that cool back without it going green. Okay, now hue saturation. And definitely a little bit to the left. And then take its saturation down a bit. All right. So now the only ones I haven't worked on are the back feet. And I think I'll mark that red to remember to come back to it by right-clicking near the eyeball and then clicking on color. But now I'm ready to start blending these internal edges. Okay, so a good time to save. If I have time, it might be fun to put one of these snakes in the talons, but like Aztec or Teotihuacan mythology to mix with my Greek mythology background, but we'll see. All right, now I'm going to go to the top again, and we work backwards. So I'm not worried about external edges. I'm worried about internal edges. Now that I've tried to match the colors, how can I blend them? I use my eraser. This is the first step. I use it fairly large, especially if I'm using a tablet where I can be pressure sensitive. That means I can erase up to this whole circle or smaller than it, depending on how hard I press. And important, I want 0% hardness, because I don't want it to cut out with a hard edge. I want it to soften. So it's like this instead. And I want opacity at 100%, flow at 100%. And the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of these internal hard edges, because those really look amateurish. That makes it look like it's a collage. Now that I've gotten rid of those internal hard edges, now I can go to a lower opacity if I have enough overlap. If I don't, I'm just kind of stuck with what I have, and we'll learn a technique to build more pixels and overlap later. So I want the spots on the nose still, but I want to blend it in here and here. And I do not love the fluorescent green lighting on the bottom of my jaguar's head. And that's something I'll have to fix with direct adjustment tools like the sponge a little bit later. But in general, I liked what the adjustment tools did for me. Okay, now you can see. So the eraser is my main first blending tool. Soft edge. This is what it looked like before, and now this is what it looks like. So makes a big difference. I can even reveal some of these whiskers coming through. And I can take that opacity down, maybe even to the 20s. So it's really subtle. Really subtle blend of these two layers. As long as I have enough overlap there. Again, not worried about the outside edges right now. Okay, next, the eyes. What can I do to blend these? Well, more of the same. This kind of, because I already got rid of the hard edges, so I was already playing with placing and blending these eyes. Now I'm just at a really low opacity, letting the layer underneath show through. And that helps the colors to match, helps everything. Trying to go back steps. Yeah, that helps. Okay. Good, good. Maybe a little bit more right here. Whoops. How did that happen? Right here. There we go. So there's lots of ways to blend color. You don't need to just use the direct adjustments, though they're always the first place to start. Reveal some more of this fur texture coming through. It's nice. If you're ever worried that you're erasing too much, you can always do it on a duplicate. Okay, next. The little spikes at the top. Same thing. Use it first at a high opacity, get rid of hard edges, and then low opacities. Again, just internal edges, not worried about the rest. Yes, because by doing levels, color balance, hue saturation, it makes it so they're easier to match. It won't be so difficult to see when you've got a good blend, because you've already done what you can to make their colors match.
Is there a way to copy the format of what color balance?
It will remember the last settings, but no.
Okay.
You can't do it like layer styles. That would be nice. And you wouldn't really want to, just because it's all based on what the pixels are of that selection. Okay, next internal edge. Moving down. It's going to be the head into the body, right? So I'm going to use that brush, go back up to 100% opacity. Yeah, so it is labor intensive to use those direct adjustments, the levels, the color balance, the hue saturation each time. But they allow you to customize each layer so that you can bring all the colors closer together towards your vision, whatever that might be. So I have to find the neck of this creature and how it flows into the chest of the pangolin reference I got there. And if I want a cleaner edge, like on this ear, right, I can do that. I can lasso it. Notice I have a feather on, so that kind of softens it. And now that I've gotten rid of that hard edge, I use my eraser with a lower opacity, soft eraser, and I reveal how this fur from the head transitions into these pine cone-like scales from the pangolin. And if I needed more of that, I could always just find a reference of a pine cone and use that. I've done that before. You can blend any kind of organic textures in compositing to help with its believability. And we're going for whatever creatures you design, we want to make them feel like they're believably composited together by paying attention to these edges. Here, I'm going to go in a much lower opacity, much lower, like in the teens. And just see if I can blend those colors a little bit without losing too much of the whiskers. Yeah, I'll keep it that much. All right, so now I've blended those. Boom. I don't like the green, but I'll show you how we fix that later. And again, it's all based on how much overlap you have. I have a little bit more overlap. I can keep biting away. Okay, now, what's next? This wing. And again, lots of repetition. We learn through repetition. Opacity 100%. Get rid of the hard edge. That's overlapping. That's why I like a big brush, so I can make these big sweeping erasing marks. Not waste a lot of time. Right, and now go to a lower opacity. Start transitioning. Now the wing is supposed to be coming out of these scales. So I need to be mindful of the anatomy, right? And where it needs to come out and where it might overlap. So sometimes what I would do is this. I'll take my lasso with a 3-pixel feather.